Welcome in, everybody, to Michigan State Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I am your host, Ryan Elke, here for episode 2. Pumped to be back here, and we're going to dive into some stuff as we monitor the Tigers possibly losing again to the Astros, down 2-0 right now. Also, I want to get out of here in time before Team USA takes on Turkey tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. Let's go 3-0. Let's sweep the group. That's what we're hoping for. But what I feel like I want to do today is a couple things I want to touch on. First off, we're going to touch on just some of the transfers that have come in, because it's always fun when those announcements are rolling in, and then it gets to about game one, and we're like, who are some of these players? I felt that a lot last year too. Just like, all right, who's this guy? Who's that guy? So, not to just brush myself up, let's brush everyone up here on the transfers that are coming in and what transfers excite me the most. And of course, this week was the NBA draft, and while Cooper and Kohler or Denim Wojcik, as I saw a great TikTok that was disappointed, Wojcik didn't go number 1 overall to the Wizards. So we'll talk about where they're going for their pro basketball careers, as well as an update on a former Spartan who's taking their next step in their basketball career. And then finally, we're going to touch on just why it's time for the university to move on from J-Bat, because we see through your game plan, sir, and it's just time to get going. So I'm excited. So like, subscribe, leave a comment if there's stuff you want to talk about. If you want to find me on X, I'm at RyanEL_key. You'll see it scrolling there on the bottom line throughout the show. Make sure you follow, of course, the Voice of College Football at the VOCFB. Just like that, Dylan Dingler hitting a bomb. Tigers only down 1. There we go. We need this win, not just for getting back into the wild card race, Central, just for morale. I feel like that's where we're at too with Michigan State. We need wins just for morale purposes. We know where we are. We just need some wins. But to start off with the transfers that are coming in, of course, we have the exciting ones. Like, we have the Cam Edwards that we know that's coming in, and we're all excited for where Cam Edwards from UConn, rushed for over 1,200 yards last year. Had 16 total touchdowns, and that is a big get, just to have someone, a bell cow, because out of all the returning backs, Brendan Tullis was the only guy with some meaningful time that is back on this Michigan State roster. So to have Cam Edwards come in on this and to be your starting back, I think is just going to be huge. But the biggest problem for Michigan State the last few years has been this offensive line. And that's kind of the group I'm most excited about that came in, because that's one thing it looked like Pat Fitzgerald, really hammered in, was getting a formidable offensive line to come in and fill out. Of course, Connor Moore is here still, so he'll be slating the right side. But to start in the middle, you lose Gublin to the draft. He was great. To replace him, we go out, say, hey, the Lions, their offensive line is great. Who's our offensive line coach? Hank Fraley. Where are your kids? That's who we got. We got Hank Fraley's son, Trent Fraley, out of North Dakota State. He's going to be a fifth-year senior, 13 starts at center last year. I'm excited for him to just mesh into that middle of that line, be the leader of that offensive line. And of course, coming with Cam Edwards from UConn was Ben Morawski. He started 12 games at left tackle. 6'7", 340 pounds, redshirt senior. And that's humongous beef that you just need. And so it's nice to have those anchors on the outside, and you get Trent Fraley in the middle. And how can we just not be excited, or at least hopeful, of what just the start of this offensive line already is? And even to have a first-year quarterback, Tigers lose fall to 1, or even to have a returning quarterback, Alessio Miljovic, I will promise I will some point get that name down. It's those Slavic names, but to have Alessio back, which just is huge in itself for a first year coach into a program. To have a quarterback that had some games under his belts, 4 starts last year and played well. Alessio, I think we were all excited what we saw out of him last year. But the one problem with Alessio is that, and even Aiden Childs, is that it didn't matter if it was a 3-step drop, 5-step, 7-step rollout. No time, absolutely no time. Just quarterbacks getting beat up left and right. And so to have Fraley and to have Morawski and to help, just solidify that line, you have Rustin Young coming back. You have AJ Dennis. So it's like we just needed more people. We need more people because as we saw over the years, even when felt like there were some good pieces on the offensive line, they didn't stay healthy enough. So, and brings us to our next transfer coming in. Another offensive line, Nick Sharp coming in from, played at Wake Forest a little bit. Was at South Carolina last year, but 5 starts at left guard. So all of a sudden we're seeing the trenches built through this transfer portal. And that's one thing that you just had to address immediately. I trust Courtney Hawkins enough with the wide receiver room to where there can be questions there, but there's a track record of him, developing that talent in that room. So I don't need a splashy wide receiver. I need some beef just in the middle, just to take care of business so we can run the ball, so we have time to develop a passing game. Because that was, the downfall of Jonathan Smith is just we just didn't see good enough play in the trenches on either side to really sustain any type of momentum in a game. And so to get Fraley, to get Morawski, to get Sharp, and even bringing in Robert Wright, 6'5", near 300 pounds, from Georgia Southern, but hey, 11 starts at right tackle last year. Even though you have your tackle spots kind of sealed up, you need that depth, because as we saw with the injuries over the past few years, you just need offensive line depth in college football. And Wright coming in as a redshirt junior, hopefully we get 2 years out of him. And I'm excited just for this year. Nick Sharp, he graduate senior, hits his 6th year. So with Fraley, Morawski, and Sharp, more, it's all their last years. But you get Robert Wright in to hopefully kind of be that spell offensive lineman to help fill in. And I'm excited what Pat Fitzgerald did in this transfer portal season to kind of solidify that offensive line, because that was just, it's hard to build an offensive line just straight through recruiting. It's going to take time. We got the 4-star Charles Johnson coming in. He gets to come in. He doesn't have to play immediately, and that's nice too. He can hopefully sit, learn some. If he can get some time playing, that'd be great. But hopefully it's not a necessity that he needs playing time, that it's more of these early games of playing Eastern, playing Toledo, that we can get them in and get them a little experience. But we can rely on these transfer guys that we brought in, and hopefully it meshes well quick, because with Game 3 Notre Dame on the schedule, we don't have time for tomfoolery on the offensive line. And so with the offensive line brought in through the transfer portal, that's going to help Cam Edwards a lot too. So that's the thing that excites me the most about the transfers that came in. It seems like, Pat Fitzgerald had his eyes on what was needed most and went and attacked it. And to kind of build and sustain that offensive line, it's going to be important, especially for the start of the season. Now we flip to the other side. We flip to the defensive line. The transfers brought in, not a lot of Power 5 experience. So brought in Trey Lyle, coming in from Southeast Missouri State. He's a redshirt sophomore, so some years to grow on him. But just 8 games played last year, half a sack, 4.5 tackles for loss, 16 tackles. We'll see about that. Kenny Soares um, played under Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern a couple years ago. It was at NC State last season. 8 starts, 80 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, half a sack, and then we have Keenis Thompson coming in from Weber State. 9 starts, 4 sacks. So Soares is your Power 5 experience, not a lot of production, but some familiarity there. Well, that's been the other bugaboo about Michigan State over the last few years. I mean, how many games did we go last year without a sack? That's just downright embarrassing for a Power 5 team, especially a Big Ten team, to go, what was it, the first 6 games without an official sack. And I love what was brought in on the offensive line. The defensive line still raises a lot of questions. We hope that things turn around. Maybe Max Bullock can coach them up. Maybe we see a different style of defense from Joe Rossi to kind of mix it up, mix those what they show on that line, and we can get some pressure in on the quarterback, because that was also a huge disappointment over the last few years under Jonathan Smith. Is just you're asking your corners to do a lot, and with the way the health went in the cornerback room the last few years, like you needed your front 7 to step up and do something. So we all know Jordan Hall's back. We all love Jordan Hall. Definition of a Spartan dog. I mean, he's been through Mel Tucker. He's been through Jonathan Smith. The fact that this man is staying for another coach tells a lot about his character. And I think we all love Jordan Hall through and through. But to bring in a counterpart for him, Wayne Matthews going, bring in Deion Crawford from Buffalo. Dude was a tackle machine, 81 tackles last year, 3.5 sacks. So hopefully we see Deion Crawford get in the mix and on these blitz packages and kind of, wreak some havoc for this Michigan State defense, because we need some help, because the secondary, the big get was Trey Ball from Iowa State, who's a stud. Like, we still need a lot of help. I was a huge Aiden West fan. I loved 5-star Aiden West, but he transferred out to Minnesota, and that hurt me to the core, because he got some playing time throughout the season. I loved what I saw out of Aiden West. But when there's a coaching change, you can't blame a kid for testing his options, to not knowing what's coming in. And he's off to Minnesota. I'm sure he'll have a great year for the Golden Gophers, which is sad to see as a Spartan fan. But glad he's got another opportunity to go play. And of course, we get a familiar name back in Chuck Brantley. We all know Charles Brantley, the one-handed pick off Cade McNamara to seal that huge win over Michigan, which now was 5 years ago. And that's something we, sadly are living in the past of, is that Kenneth Walker year was 5 long years ago. That's the last time we had a true competitive team. Chuck Brantley went to Miami, and I guess he just went there for sightseeing, because not a lot of playing time for Chuck there, but he's coming back, and anybody in the secondary is needed. It's been a rough few years for the health of that secondary. Nakai Martinez is back, but that man's he's put his body on the line, has been in and out, and that's one of the big questions. I mean, it's sad that the whole defense is a big question coming into the season, but that's the coaching side of the coaching ball we trust the most. We get Pat Fitzgerald, rugged defensive minded coach. We keep Joe Rossi, with most of us were fine with, because as the season went along, it was less about what the defense was doing because it felt like they were playing well enough. It's just the offense wasn't giving them a chance to catch their breath or to stay in the game. And we bring back the prodigal son, Max Bola, as the co-defensive coordinator. It's the biggest questions we have. And from what we brought in, did we bring in enough? Because yes, we have Jordan Hall back, we have Nakai Martinez. They're guys that are representing us Big 10 days. We have Derek Simmons down low, Ben Roberts, but defense, we need more than just those 4 guys. We need all 11. As my old football coach used to say, I'm sure yours say, 11 on the hat, 11 on the ball, 11 hats on the ball. Like let's get to it. We just need to see more of that. We need to see, hopefully from the start, just shut down these inferior opponents, and let's give a hell of a game to Notre Dame. That's really what we want to see for that first quarter of the season. Is, do we look just like a competent football team? Because that's just been hard to see over the last few years, and hopefully we see some growth over the season. But excuse me, fighting a little bug here, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Hopefully talking Michigan State football, a little Michigan State basketball today will make me feel a little better. But I want to thank you for joining us here, Michigan State Live on the Voice of the College Football Network. I'm your host, Ryan Elke. Show number 2 right now. And as it says right on the bottom screen right now, shows are Tuesdays and Thursdays, live on YouTube, live on Facebook, 9 p.m. Eastern. Like, subscribe, leave your comments. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at RyanEL_Key. That way, you know how to pronounce my last name, L Key. Boom. Simple enough. Find me on Twitter. Shoot me, messages, get into the tweets if there's stuff you want to talk about. So I'll be perusing the message boards as well to see what you guys are talking about. But if you're just joining us, just been going through the transfers that excite me the most, and how I love what Pat Fitzgerald did in the transfer portal with the offensive line, and to pair it up with Cam Edwards, it seems like we have a solid building block, at least on offense, to just get something going. We have the comfortability with Alessio back at quarterback. We have McCray. We have a solid stable of tight ends returning. So it's like, okay, we have those fun skill positions, we're comfortable with. But that offensive line's got to gel quick, and hopefully, we're not less, questioning what the heck are we watching, early on in September, that we're going into Big Ten play, actually feeling confident going into Big Ten. And that, for me, like, of course you need 6 wins this year for Pat Fitzgerald. Like, that's unequivocal. Like, the lowest bar you can set for this program at the moment. Like, we can't, dilly-dally around with like 4 or 5 wins, or, missing a extra point to beat Indiana to be bowl eligible of the then lowly Indiana Hoosiers, not, the Signetti Hoosiers. But, we need to kind of set the tone for Spartan football early on in this season, and race out to these wins, because, us as a fan base, we're starving for some. It's been 5 years since a winning season, since that magical Kenneth Walker year. So we're hungry for something, and I think we're all excited for Pat Fitzgerald to set the tone right for this Spartan program. So enough about football at the moment. Of course, this week was the NBA draft, and while we didn't see any Spartans go, selected in the NBA draft, we did see Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler. They were able to sign to some NBA teams, which was awesome. Carson Cooper signing a 2-way deal with the Memphis Grizzlies. Kind of love that fit. Of course, they have Zach Edey there, clogging up the middle. Edey did have some health issues last year, but for Carson Cooper, like, the rise of that man, and I love Carson to death. Over the last few years covering, MSU basketball, Carson Cooper was the one man who was always down for a comment. And was always just up to answer anything. And I just remember one time, um, I've asked, talked to him enough over the years, and one time I go to him like, "Hey, Carson," I think it was right before Jace was doing the slam dunk contest. I was like, "Hey, you down for a comment?" He's like, "Oh, I'm trying to get out of here." I'm like, just gonna ask you about Jace and get out. He goes, "Oh, if we're talking about Jace, yeah, of course, I'll talk for a minute." And they actually ended up getting bombarded with a few reporters after that. So I apologized to him. He's like, "Oh, you're all good." So I have ungodly amount of respect and love for Carson Cooper. So I'm excited that he goes to the Memphis Grizzlies, is getting a chance on a two-way. So hopefully we get to see him jump up in the NBA here in the next year or two. But to go from where he went to being, a soccer goalie in high school to the IMG B Academy, not recruited for basketball, to be taken on at Michigan State, and in the 4 years to just go from where he was freshman year when Cooper came in, it was like, oh no, here we go, to the last 2 years, you're like, this is our man, this is our guy. So love that Cooper gets to stay stateside, gets that chance at the NBA, and to not be too far away, at least a short plane ride away for his family in Jackson. So proud of Carson Cooper, happy for him. And as for our other guy, Jackson Kohler, the man gets to go home. So at least for this summer, Jackson Kohler signed an Exhibit 10 deal with the Utah Jazz. So it means he gets a training camp in summer league, guaranteed spot. So for Kohler to get his shot as well, while I think his best chance to prolong his professional career is probably overseas in Europe. For him to get a chance to play for that hometown team, especially for that Kohler family to stay in state for once and watch their son play. That's great for Jackson and that Kohler family, because as we all knew about the lore and of Jeff Kohler, Jackson's dad, the T-shirts of his senior year, and how active he was on Twitter. I think you guys know, I know, like Mr. and Mrs. Kohler, they were flying out for every single game. Flying out from Utah and getting to Lansing on those flights it's not an easy task. So for the Kohler family to have Jackson in the state of Utah and to be able to watch him start his professional career is amazing. So I'm happy for where Cooper landed, happy where Kohler landed. Hopefully with Triple J out in Utah, Jaren Jackson, maybe they can connect, and Jaren can help them out this summer, and see if Kohler can stick around with the Jazz for a bit to give that Kohler family a little less Delta miles or something that they need to use to go see their son play. So happy for them. And another news, I didn't see exactly where he's going, but Xavier Tillman, he is no longer going to be in the NBA. He signed an overseas contract. So he's going to be flying out. He's going to be heading to Turkey, actually. So Xavier Tillman is going to be doesn't get that NBA contract, but is going to be going over to Turkey to prolong his career. Of course, we all love Xavier Tillman, him playing with Cassius. He's going to be playing with Trabzonspor over in Turkey. So huge for Tillman to keep that basketball career going. Of course, he's one of the Spartan favorites, over the past 10 years, who's put on the green and white. So for Tillman to continue that career is something great. There's no shame in going overseas. It's a nice way to get a 6-figure contract and keep that money rolling in. It's just hard with the young family moving over there, but that's great life experience as well. The kids are young enough too, where you can actually kind of make that jump and dive right in. So Cooper going to Memphis, Jackson gets to stay home in Utah, and Xavier Tillman making the trips overseas. Proud of the Spartan basketball players continuing their basketball careers. So now we'll jump into the final point. Saw this on Twitter. David Harns of Spartans Illustrated. Great follow, great website they run in Spartans Illustrated. I love talking to Dave here and there. Talking about J-Bat, how I think it's time for him to officially move on. We know what's happening here. Yeah, Spartan Ventures officially kicks off next week, July 1st. Maybe that's the reason he's selling, why he hasn't officially left yet. He's one step here, one step in Lexington. But we know the real reason he hasn't left. And I think we covered it a little bit on episode 1. It's the $5 million buyout. Because the buyout clause in Bat's deal was if, Gustowitz left, that triggers a 50% reduction in that buyout. So it goes from $5 million to $2.5 million that Kentucky would have to pay. So what's J-Bat trying to do? He's trying to play the waiting game. He's trying to save his new boss, his new employer, $2.5 million. And we know J-Bat's all about that money, man. That's what he's brought in to do, is to save that athletic department money and bring in as much money as they can. And the last thing they probably want to do is start by adding $2.5 million to a tab to Michigan State. But at some point, an adult in the room's got to tell him to go. Is that going to be Kevin, former President Gustowitz, who's still here, who's finishing up his tenure? Is it going to be the Board of Trustees? I'm sure J-Bat would love to listen to them one more time, talking about saving money as one of the Board of Trustees tries to sue us for $25 million. But at some point, we just got to call the spade a spade and say, hey, thank you for your time. It was a wonderful 11 months. Get out. We need to move on too. Pay us the $5 million. You decided to leave. You took this knowing what your buyout was. Go. Just go, man. Like, thank you for your time. Go to Kentucky. Have fun there. It's a shame it didn't work out, but I think it's the point of frustration here for some Spartan fans of just, the two people that decide to leave that are hanging on a little bit. That it's like, hey, you were ready to move on. You moved on. We're ready to move on. Let's fully move on. So for J-Bat to kind of hang around trying to possibly get that $2.5 million tab knocked off, like, we see right through it. You're not going to trick any of us of what you're doing. It's not like you're like this long tenured AD who wanted to, see the start of this new venture he was going. Like, no, you're trying to save your new boss a big bill, and let's just get over it. So, J-Bat, just go home, man. Just go to Kentucky. Maybe Carson can take you on the way going to Memphis. He can drop you off somewhere. But, oh, man, it seems like the never-ending story at the moment for Michigan State. That's why for the majority of this episode, I just wanted to talk about football. It was the first episode we talked a lot about Bat and Gustowitz leaving. I'm ready to just get on to the people that are here and the people that are ready to go. So I want to thank you all for joining in for episode 2. Again, leave some comments here on the video, or you can find me on Twitter. It's scrolling across the bottom screen right now. Find me on X, RyanEL_key. Just shoot me a tweet, shoot me a message. I think my DMs are open. I'm not, that popular person where I need to close them off to anyone. But if you got some topic ideas, just let me know, and let's dive into everything. So we'll be back next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, with our next show. Once again, thanks to the Voice of College Football Network for getting this show up and running. For all of you that have tuned in here on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Let's keep this channel growing. Let's create that community before football season begins. So when football season's here, we're locked and loaded, and we're ready to dive in and just talk about the games, because, we got about one more month of kind of getting to know this team before we're really diving into what we expect from this team and as practices ramp up. So once again, thank you everyone for joining in. I'll be back on Tuesday with our next show right here on Michigan State Live, the voice of college football network.